Than normal, having a little technical difficulties, but you know, we're working that stuff out so that we can bring you the tech news of the day. Now, speaking of tech news, we were talking about Leap Motion. We're saying to wait on that for right now. Let's not jump to conclusions or jump to anything. Let's wait until we can, you know, until Leap Motion has some more software updates and downloads, you know, because right now, it's just not practical to use it. And we're going to give this thing a full workout. Our tech crew is ready to give this thing a full workout after the show. And we're going to come back on Thursday with our full review from everybody to, you know, to see what this thing is doing. But let's get into our next story, which has to do with Apple. Now, Apple, a while ago, there were some accusations made by workers at Apple. Well, not the workers, but there was an investigation done on Apple about their worker treatment situation in China. And Apple let in the cameras for the first time in their plants so that they can see, people could see that their workers weren't treated, you know, very bad. But according to the BBC Business News, they say Apple faces new China worker abuse claims. Now, the technology giant is facing a fresh allegations of worker rights violation at a Chinese factory of one of its suppliers, the Pentagon Group, Pegatron Group. Sorry. China Labor Watch has alleged that 3 factories of Pegatron violate a great number of international and Chinese laws and standards as far as its human workers are concerned. Now, these can include underage labor, contract violation, excessive working hours, and things of that sort. Both Apple and Pegatron said that they would investigate the allegations immediately. Now, according to a statement released by Apple, they say Apple is committed to providing safe and fair working conditions throughout our supply chain, the firm said in a statement. Now, Pegatron's chief executive Jason Cheng said in a statement that the firm took the allegations very seriously, is what he said. He said, "We will investigate them fully, take immediate action to correct any violations to Chinese labor laws and our own code of conduct." Now, Pegatron sets very high standards for ourselves and with our own dedicated team that audits and investigates issues, the firm added. They feel that they can get to the bottom of these allegations. Now, the report also goes on to say that Apple, one of the world's biggest firms, has had to deal with similar claims in the past, as we said before, when one of the biggest suppliers, Foxconn, which is what we were talking about, Foxconn accused them of violating worker rights. Now, if you remember, Foxconn has a contract with Apple. Foxconn makes Apple's parts. So all the parts for iPhone, iPad, iMac, they're made by Foxconn. And with Apple tending to want to make their own, parts and so forth, Foxconn is looking to get a how do you put it? They're looking to get a different type of contracts. They're looking into getting into manufacturing their own parts so that they don't have to depend on companies like Apple to manufacture their parts. But Foxconn accused Apple of violating workers' rights. Now, coming up after the break, because we're right on the cusp of a break, coming up after the break, we're going to continue talking about this Chinese labor abuse claim against Apple, and you know, we're going to tell you exactly what's happening here with this thing. But instead of taking a break, let's just continue straight with the story first, and then we'll take a break, because according to our tech crew in the back, they're saying that we still have time in this segment. So we're going to go ahead and continue on with this story. Now, Conditions at Foxconn factories came under even greater scrutiny after a spat of workers' suicides at some plants came to light. On Monday, this Monday gone, Li Kuang, executive director of China Labor Watch, claimed that our investigators and investigations have shown that labor conditions at Pegatron factories are even worse than those at Foxconn factories. And there were suicides going on there. The campaign group said that it found that average weekly working hours in the 3 factories investigated by it were approximately 66 hours. That's average weekly hours worked. 66 hours and approximately 66 hours, 67 hours, and 69 hours respectively for the various weeks. So first week that they checked it, average working hours was 66 hours. Second week, 67 hours, and the third week was 69 hours. So we're talking about 70-hour work weeks here at these Pegatron work labs. And it alleged that Pegatron Shanghai, our investigation uncovered that the workers were forced to sign forms indicating that their overtime hours were less than the actual levels. Conditions at these factories are so poor that most workers refuse to continue working for long. He claimed that 30 of the 110 new recruits at one of the factories had left within a period of 2 weeks. However, Apple disputed those claims, saying that it had closely tracked working hours at all of these facilities, but our most recent survey in June found that Pegatron employees making Apple products worked 46 hours per week on average, according to Apple. Now, other violations claimed by the campaign group include insufficient wages, poor working conditions, poor living conditions, difficulty in taking leave, abuse by management, and environmental pollution. Apple said that it had been in close contact with China Labor Watch for several months, investigating issues they've raised and sharing our findings. Now, I mean, this thing with Apple, you know, as we can see, that this is not a small allegation. This thing from Apple happened before, as we just told you with Foxconn, and you know, Apple kind of floated right by it. What they did was they brought in some cameras, and they were determined to show that they had not violated any kind of working conditions at all. So they brought in cameras, and everyone saw the place was clean. Everyone had on anti-static gloves and hats to make sure their hair don't fall in like circuit boards or semiconductors or anything like that could transfer electricity, and everything looked pretty clean, you know, for the cameras. But that wasn't the story told by the Foxconn group. But Apple suffered no ill effects of that meeting. Now it seems that the same thing is happening again, that Apple is being charged with poor working conditions for one of their plants, and we just have to see how Apple bounced back from this. Now, the difference between this and now is Tim Cook and Steve Jobs. The last time Steve Jobs was alive and Apple was on top of the world, they had a lot of market share in phones. Their iPod division was doing well, and so Apple really could skate by these accusations and no one really cared. Now, however, the same is not true. Apple doesn't have the same clout it used to have like it did before. So these allegations can really hurt Apple, especially if workers are walking out and Apple really doesn't have that innovative product that they hope would keep them on top. Because right now they're basically trying to play catch up, because companies like Samsung, companies like LG, Sony, they have all surpassed or either caught up or surpassed Apple as far as technology and phones, as far as tablets and things like that. Apple is no longer at the top of the heap. Even their market share has been falling as far as phones and so forth. Now they're second to Samsung as far as market share when it comes to phones. So, and Samsung has like a 29% market share as far as phones. That's on Android. That's just Samsung. So Apple really is struggling right now in its identity to try to make itself what it used to be in the technological world. And these new allegations, these new charges against them from China, from Pegatron, that their factories there in China, really is going to hurt Apple if Apple can't get this thing under control. Now, last time they let people in to see the working conditions. Will they do the same thing this time? You know, how long will it take them to do that? If they take 2 or 3 or 4 months to bring cameras in, people are going to say they cleaned things up and then brought cameras in, so it's not going to be an accurate report. So Apple has to be very careful how they deal with this story, how they deal with these conditions. If it is true and they decide to let, if it's not true, the best thing they could do is let cameras in immediately like they did before. If it is true, then they're not going to let any cameras in, and they're going to want to clean things up first. But that's going to be an indication to people that these things are happening, and you know, companies are going to really scrutinize Apple to make sure that this sort of thing doesn't really happen again. So we just have to wait and see how Apple deals with this situation in as far as how do we put it? As far as their working conditions are concerned. Now, we're coming up on a break, but coming up after the break, Microsoft, Intel, Oracle, and AT&T come to Apple's defense in looming iPhone ban. So, on one hand, we have Apple standing by itself because they are allegedly abusing workers in China. And then on the other hand, we have these big tech giants like Microsoft, Intel, Oracle, AT&T, all coming to Apple's defense in the fact that the iPhone 4 may be banned for some reason. You want to stay tuned for that, coming up right after the break, right here on Tech Pulse. So just stay tuned. We'll be right back. No, really. We'll be right back. There we go. Right back.